All right, thank you. All right, thank you, everybody. Welcome back from closed session. County Council, do we have anything to report?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. There is no reportable action. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So that would take us to our next item on the agenda, which is sorry, I need to find my glasses. 3.3, which is accept introduction and waive further reading of an ordinance of the Board of Supervisors establishing campaign disclosure requirements and contribution limits and amending lobbying definitions and enforcement, and continue to December 16th, 2025 for adoption, and to provide feedback and direction to staff if desired. And we have our Register of Voters, Francisco Diaz, here for that.
Yes,
And County Council.
Mr. Chair and members of the board, I'll be happy to provide you with an overview and summary of what is before you today. Supervisors Kosmicki and Zanger brought forward a future agenda item proposing the enactment of a $1,000 contribution limit per election starting in 2026 with $100 escalators every 4 years, reporting requirements for all contributions of $25 or more, and exploring mechanisms to increase transparency around expenditures. With that, we conducted our research and have brought before you a campaign contribution limit ordinance, which is consistent with the majority of the California counties. Under AB 571, if a county does not adopt its own limits, candidates automatically fall under the state Assembly and Senate contribution limits. San Benito County has not had its own contribution limits or local disclosure framework since the passage of AB 571. So what we have brought forward to you today, as I said, is consistent with a majority of the counties throughout the state. The key components of the ordinance are $1,000 per contributor per election, starting with the 2026 cycle, automatic $100 increase every 4 years to account for inflation. It applies to individuals, businesses, and political action committees. It also includes rules for loans, transfers between committees, and aggregated contributions made through intermediaries. There are enhanced disclosure requirements. The state restricts cash donations of $100 or more, requiring disclosure. This ordinance mirrors that, but requires disclosure of all contributions of $25 or more. There is mandatory electronic reporting. Electronic filing is required for all campaign statements, reports, and amendments. The reports must be searchable and accessible to the public, improving transparency compared to paper filings. The ordinance creates a complete enforcement scheme parallel to the Political Reform Act. We have administrative enforcement. The county may issue administrative penalties for violation. It includes notice, hearing, and appeal process. There's criminal enforcement for knowing and willful violations, which are subject to misdemeanor prosecution. We've also, at the same time, consistent with what is presented to you today as far as the campaign limit ordinance, is to update the lobbying regulations as well under the county code. The ordinance updates the lobbying article to modernize and clarify definitions so that they align with the new ordinance, apply the same administrative enforcement process to lobbying violations, and to make sure lobbying activity remains separate from campaign activity with clear references to each other. This will create consistency and reduce administrative confusion since both systems now use the same enforcement structure. So staff is recommending that the board review, consider, and deliberate over the ordinance and to provide staff with direction as to whether or not you wish to proceed with the ordinance as drafted or whether you wish for staff to amend the ordinance and bring it back to you for further consideration. Today, if the board introduces this ordinance without material change, this would be considered the first reading. It would then come back to you at your next meeting, which would be on December 16th for the second reading, and it would then become effective 30 days after that meaning it would be effective in mid-January. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I'll just briefly, along with Supervisor Zanger, propose this. This is the second time that I've brought this forward. I brought it forward several years ago in my first term as a supervisor, and it didn't gain support at the time. But just to sort of reiterate the logic behind it, first of all, this isn't a radical proposal. As we've just heard, there are numerous counties and cities throughout the state of California who have local campaign finance ordinances. The state of California obviously has the broader rules in place that we follow. When you talk about a $6,000, I believe, or so limit for individual contributions, that unless you have a campaign finance ordinance, to me, there's no logic in a county of our size with 65 or so thousand, 67,000 people to have the same rules as much larger counties. And in fact, a lot of much larger counties, the biggest counties in the state, most of them actually have campaign finance rules that have lower donation limits. So we're essentially a small county where, it reasonably costs, roughly $10,000 to $20,000 if you do a campaign the right way. You can run a successful campaign. It depends on how you do it. You may want some more money than that, but you can raise under the proposed limits, there are other counties that go much farther than this. And when I initially proposed this several years ago, I threw out $250, and this is an attempt to be to really be more reasonable about it, and to not restrict candidates from having the ability to go out and raise that money. So, if you find 10 to 20 donors, plus the smaller donations, you definitely can get there without, too much heartache. And there are pros and cons with local campaign finance ordinances like anything else. And I fully understand that there's an argument that, first of all, there's independent expenditures, and how do you manage that as part of the dynamic? There's an argument that somebody can self-finance a campaign. But for me, overwhelmingly, because I've seen this, when it started in the media and I would cover these things, and now as a supervisor, the pros far outweigh the cons, where, $6,000, all you need is 3 or 4 of those donations, and there's a reason why people are donating $6,000, and it's not because they like us. You don't throw around $6,000 just as a courtesy. There is a history in this county of special interests donating to campaigns for a reason, and this is an attempt to really even the playing field so that people who don't necessarily want to have those connections with those special interests can still go out and get reasonable donation amounts. And $1,000 is it really isn't that drastic at all when you compare it to other counties. You can go to FPPC's website if you just Google California campaign finance counties, and they have a whole list of all the counties. It's a pretty long list. It looks like it's about half the counties in California that are listed on the FPPC website. I'm not sure if there are others on top of that. And then the cities is a much, much longer list, as you can imagine, that have local campaign finance ordinances, including, if you just go through it, Gilroy, Morgan Hill surrounding us. And then if you go to the counties, you'll see that counties like Santa Clara, Santa Cruz, Monterey have campaign finance ordinances, Sacramento, San Francisco, so go down the line, the San Diego. The point is, Merced, that this is not something that's out of the ordinary. And in our county in particular, being such a small county, I would argue that there's just no logical reason why we should have such a large donation cap. And beyond that, let's see here. The only question mark I have, aside from what's been drafted, and I really appreciate elections working with county council on this, and did consult just on thoughts so that we don't have to necessarily do several meetings to go over this and iron things out. The only question is, can can we limit third parties in any way? Can we increase the disclosure requirements for third parties to really sort of try to address that flaw in the system? And it's not just a flaw in local campaign finance, it's a flaw overall, whether you're going by state rules or whether you're going by local rules. The third party issue is inherently a flaw in the political system. So county council, I don't know if you offhand, and maybe I should have asked beforehand, but that's something that I'm wondering whether that can be addressed as well at some point, the putting some further limitations on third party entities.
Are you talking about third parties,
PACs
being able to make campaign donations to elected officials?
They have less restrictions basically under, my understanding is that they would have less restrictions or no restrictions under this sort of ordinance.
So what you're inquiring is whether or not we can increase the level of restrictions that would be placed on them?
And maybe that's just something to
In
look
what
at
regard?
going forward. It's just my understanding that third-party donors, they have more ins and outs, more ways of getting around the system. And when you're talking about, lowering the donation limit for everyone else, I just want to make sure that we try to, fill all these gaps as we go. But mainly, I think, in the immediate, I've always believed this. This isn't something I campaigned on this in 2019, that this is something that I personally was committed to. And it's not $250. $250 that would have been a big challenge. And I think even at the time I tried to compromise with $500. This is an attempt with $1,000, and talking to Supervisor Zanger, this is an attempt to be really extraordinarily reasonable. It's in line with large counties that have ordinances in place, and we are a very small county, so you don't have the same level of media buys that you need to go through as a candidate in large counties. Large county campaigns, those are 6 to 7 figure campaigns. You can win, if you're willing to do the work, you can win a local campaign and people believe in you with $10,000 per primary, per, general. You can, if you want to go higher, certainly go for it. But you can raise $20,000, $30,000 with $1,000 limit. That's something you can do if you do the work. So that's kind of the effort here, is to overall even the playing field. And as we go, try to address some of the other issues like third parties. The other thing that comes up is that I can think of is recalls, referendums. Is there a way to address, because I believe there are some further restraints that we have with regard to, and certainly I'm guessing Francisco could answer this, but with regard to recalls, referendums, if there's any way to open the door to look at those as well. This is really just an attempt to bring everybody on an even playing field so that, and to limit the exposure that we have to special interest influence. And I don't think anybody, I just want to be clear, I don't think anybody on this board has been influenced by special interests. This is something that for me has always been something to address in the long term. And I have seen it in prior cycles with prior boards where, because it was my job to scrutinize all this data, that, so-and-so took from that, so-and-so took from that, and they're voting this way and they're voting for this and that. And it was very clear that there was a connection between the amounts of money that people raised and who they were getting dollars from and how they were ultimately voting. So that's all I had as somebody who proposes. I don't know if Supervisor Zanger has anything further, if you want to wait until...
I'll just add something really quickly because you hit most of it. And like you said, I helped push this along before when I did, and I supported it, and I support it now, obviously. I'll just say that, broadly speaking, if you could somehow poll every resident in the county and ask them if they wanted further restrictions and further campaign finance reform, I guarantee you'd have an overwhelming yes. So I think people support this type of thing in general. I think they support it in this specific instance. And I think that the arguments to not go through with something like this are just not as compelling as the reasons to do this reform. That's all.
And since we spoke, I do want to open, if you would like to talk now, other two. Okay, okay. Okay, we'll go to public comment and we'll bring it back.
If you'd like to make a comment in chambers, please provide a speaker card. On Zoom, please press *9 or the raised hand icon. And on Zoom, you've been unmuted and you have 3 minutes.
Hi, good afternoon, Supervisors. Stacey McGrady, District 1. I was looking through this section last week, and then I was wanting to educate myself further. So I went into the campaign finance on our elections website because I do have concerns about this. First of all, I think it's redundant. We already have state laws and the FPBC that have oversight on this. But, you know, maybe it is necessary, because one of the things I discovered is, and this especially interests me as Supervisor Kosmicki, you just said that people who are donating, or companies or firms that are making donations of $6,000, it's not just as a courtesy, and there must be a special interest. And so that brings me to my point, as what I discovered last night was these multiple loans to Supervisor Zanger's previous campaign. His previous employer, I think it's Blevins Construction, made at least 4 loans in the amount of $4,900. And then I couldn't find anywhere that those were either repaid or forgiven. So it's interesting to me. I mean, maybe this is the best thing. I personally am concerned that it would make it harder for people who can't self-fund, people who don't have big companies, corporations, lots of money behind them. It would be more exclusive and less inclusive for large parts of our population and our community. So I do have those concerns. On the other hand, when you stand up there at your position and make statements about me, for example, saying that I am taking special interest money when there is absolutely no evidence that I am in the pockets of developers, but you use your platform to go on when I only have 3 minutes to speak, and you bring disparaging remarks against me, that's inappropriate and uncalled for and not factual. And then when I go into the actual reports and the documents and the facts and the evidence, and I see that our supervisor is getting money from a company not even located in San Benito County, but in Monterey County, well, then that is very suspicious. And you wonder who really is in the hands of the developers. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next in chambers, Elia.
Thank you. Good afternoon. So yeah, I agree with the last speaker. We already have by law what is and what shouldn't be, and you know it's amusing that you want to compare Gilroy and Santa Clara County, and you want to do that. You look at their population and you're saying, well, they're doing it, but when we tell you to compare Gilroy and Santa Clara County for employee wages, oh, no. Go find some small little county, you know, that doesn't have the same population and the money that they do. Yet you want to compare, you know, San Benito County with Gilroy and Santa Clara County based on what they have. And you should look at the population. You're saying we're a small county, we should have that. Well, because we are a small county and we all know who everyone is in this town, they should not be retaliated against because they donated $25 towards a candidate that you don't want to see sitting up at the dais in any manner whatsoever. So, you know, Zanger's shaking his head. No, it's not true, but it's a public record. Supervisor Zanger, Supervisor Velasquez. He funds the whole enchilada. He's out there doing mailers all the time. He's an elected official. Is he reporting that? No, he's not. He also sends out a bunch of mailers besides the whole enchilada. Is he reporting that as part of what he's supposed to do by law? No, he's not. But here you are saying, "Oh, we want to make the donations. We have 2 supervisors that are coming up for election next year, and I want to know every single $25 I would donate it instead of $99 the way it's required now." So now you want to know that Joe Smith gave $25 and it has to get reported. They could do $99. So now what you want them to do? $10, $15? That's a lot of work as well. The city of Gilroy, when Ignacio was there, they did it for $1. You had to report a bottle of water. Somebody gave you a bottle of water. You want to do something productive and continue to work what you're supposed to be doing to move this county forward. Not something like this. This is just ridiculous. You probably have the votes, but I would hope that, when it comes to special interests, what do you consider special interest? We don't have something like that. Amazon came in with backdoor deals. Amazon came back under the radar. Was that a special interest, or was that something that happened? That was in the city. That was under Ignacio's watch. But no, now you want to say you've got two supervisor positions coming up, and I want to know who's giving what supervisor money when they're running their election. I think this is just completely unfair if you want to compare it to another county.
And that concludes public comment.
All right, we'll bring it back to the board. Mr. Kerr or Satella, since you didn't speak before.
Sure. So I am all about transparency. Anyone that goes and looks at my campaign filings, I've even had people say that they use them to be able to show the detail of what all of my expenses are for and where my money comes from. I don't agree. I respectfully disagree that it means when you get a large donation that you're being bought off. I can't believe how much it costs to conduct a campaign. I agree if you work really hard and are able to self-fund, which I did in my first campaign, over 60% of my first campaign was self-funded, that you can get it done. But I will tell you, you can't do that every time, and especially in this day and age with the expenses of campaigns, I don't see how you can do this without raising funds. And just because someone donates, and you'll see in my January statement, I received multiple large donations from people that support me as a candidate and an incumbent. And it has nothing to do with anything other than that. If there are conflicts, the one thing I want to remind everybody of is that I'm going to say it wrong, is it the Levine Act, which is a government code section 84308, makes it really clear you have to recuse yourself from voting on topics when you've received over, I believe it's $500. Yep, $500. So it doesn't matter if you receive $1,000 from somebody or $500 from somebody. You have to recuse yourself, and I believe it's a 6-month period. If I'm going to go back through. And to me, that is even more restrictive than this campaign reduction of donations. At the same time, I don't understand how you encourage future leaders to want to run for office if they are unable to get donations and they have to try and self-fund. One of the things I don't want to have an unforeseen impact of this is that we lose out on having qualified candidates run that just can't afford it without adequate donations. A mailer, especially these days, I see mailers that are countywide. I personally can't compete with countywide mailers. Countywide mailers are somewhere between $5,000 and $7,000, depending on what type of mailer. Some of them are these big fold-out things. I don't know how to compete with that without major donations. My other thing is, so we're limiting it to be more transparent, but we're reducing how much money. Wouldn't you want to know the people that are really funding? Because you can get a company out there to donate the $1,000, but how do you know that there's not more donations coming in for $1,000 that are all related to that? To me, all of this is doing is kind of handicapping, and that's a bad term to use. It's tying the hand behind your back as a candidate on being able to do good with campaigning in a fair and honest manner. Now, the $99, I could care less if it's 99 or 25, it's just more, entries. I see very few people that are going to, I will say I had to give back money. People gave me $100. My campaign kickoff was $95 to be able to come to my campaign kickoff. So everybody paid $95. If they came with $100, I had to give them $5 in reimbursable because I can't accept $100. So to me, it's all about the honesty of the individuals and how much they're documenting what their expenditures are and where their revenue is coming from. Because if the documentation in your campaign filing is vague, that's where you're going to see doubt. The other thing is what are we actually trying to resolve here? Do we have an abuse in the county of individuals receiving major donations and being bought off that we're not aware of and haven't recused themselves from voting? Where I see a major challenge in this county is with conflict of interest 700 form filings. I believe, in my personal opinion, that conflict of interest filings are not monitored in this county to the level they should, even though I believe it was 2016, I don't know if I have the year right, 2016, the county clerk's office adopted a conflict of interest code that made it very clear about department heads, because all department heads are procurement managers. They are an arm of the procurement officer. And so having department heads review conflict of interest forms for their employees, to me, is more important, and where we could have things identified as being future conflicts when it comes to contract and negotiations of potential vendors working for the county, but also on elected officials. Your conflict of interest reporting is the most eye-opening if it's done accurately, where I keep being challenged in looking at things that are online. And as a former assistant county clerk that received these filings, one, the county clerk's office does not review for accuracy. They review for specific items only. It has to be brought to the attention of the county clerk by either a public member or someone that's willing to do a claim and go through the DA or the FPPC process. It's not just all of a sudden you're going to have all this information becoming available. So it's about the honesty of the candidate. And if candidates are not honest and transparent, it'll be seen in their financial filings. And even though I'm not a fan of reducing this, I'd really like to have the conversation about, could we, negotiate a different amount of the limit of contributions? Because I personally don't see how I'm going to compete as a future candidate next year. And I feel a little attacked that this is coming right before our campaigns. But if this is the way you guys want to go, I'll adhere to it. But I'll tell you right now, this makes the potential for future candidates to break rules even greater, because they're going to try and hide things, and I think that that's wrong. It's just not who I am. I would say $2,500 to $3,000 would be a better limit. I don't have a problem with the $25. I really could care less. It doesn't matter if they give you $1 or if they give you $99 or if they give you $1,000. It's the same amount of entry, and if you don't do your own entry, then you wouldn't know that. But the other question I have, the caller, the Zoom person, loans, are we addressing loans and are we addressing PACs? Because what I see this doing is it's going to push campaigns to have to be working with PACs. And I am personally not a fan of PACs. I'm not even a big fan of receiving donations from labor unions, because it does adhere to a potential that you're promising something. I didn't accept union donations last year or during my first campaign intentionally. It wasn't because they didn't ask if they wanted to. It was just I intentionally didn't want to. So PACs are a real issue. the cost of running a campaign, disenfranchising future candidates, and putting the burden on potentially having to self-fund. Those are really big cons to me, which outweigh the pros of disclosing that you received $5,000 from somebody. It's disclosed and you can't vote on any items for 6 months. So that's where I'm at. And you can use all of my words against me, which will probably happen, but I wish everybody the best, and I hope everybody is honest about their finances because it is part of the election process.
Thank you, Supervisor Sotelo.
Thank you. I'm curious, Supervisor Kosmicki, you had mentioned third party, and I just want to make sure that I didn't really understand what you were saying. So I was just hoping, before I got into kind of all of my questions and comments, if you could elaborate a little bit more. I want to understand what third party is.
And maybe there are other mechanisms, because I don't employ, or nobody's ever tried to support me, and personally, I don't believe that there's, I don't think there's this just coincidence when these third parties, PACs basically. If there are other mechanisms that I'm not familiar with, I just have never been highly educated on all the more complicated mechanisms that candidates use to run campaigns, because I've always been very just simple about it, which is try to get donations, keeping them under a certain level, and trying to run an affordable campaign that doesn't cost a lot. So and perhaps Supervisor Velasquez or somebody that's been doing this for longer, Supervisor Curl, PACs is kind of the sort of the generic.
The big concern I have with PACs, they're not supposed to be involved with the candidate. But by limiting campaign contributions, you are forcing them to basically lie. And that's the thing that I have a hard time.
And I'll let you go. But that was my point in at least broaching it with county council, is along with what we have here today, is there something that we can look at down the road, whenever that may be, regarding whatever sort of third-party mechanisms there are. Again, I'm not going to claim to be an expert on it because I've never used any or.
So I'm just trying to understand what a third party is, because I got donations from individuals, from companies, from different unions, et cetera.
I'm talking about not something that you would put on your 460s. It would be something.
So like, is it independent expenditures? Is that what it's?
Yeah.
Okay. But how does that work? Because I thought, like,
action
as
groups.
the candidate, you're not supposed to interact with them at all. And so legally, do we have anything, is there anything stopping?
That was my question for county council. So.
Okay, so I'm clear then. I guess I'm kind of clear what you were referring to with third party then. Okay, perfect. And, I did review some of the comparison of other counties and, opening up a lot of them. Yeah, there are some that set limits. A lot of them, though, the limits, they set them at $25,000, $20,000. So just because they were listed on that FPP website, it doesn't necessarily mean that they've gone below what the state has, their limitations are. It's actually, they've increased the rates. There's even some that have made it so that you can only raise X amount for a campaign, that everybody, whether 50,000, 30,000, whatever it is. And so it's kind of across the board. I think you have to kind of figure out what your community kind of needs are. So I think that obviously going into a campaign, this is a bit concerning to me. And I don't know that, there was a comment earlier about the pros far outweigh the cons. I don't know what the pros are. Like, I heard the comment that it outweighs, but I would like a little bit more explanation of what the pros are. I don't believe it really evens the playing field. I believe it sets the playing field even further apart. I think what we get is a haves versus have-nots. People that can fund their own campaign, or if you can't fund your own campaign, it really is going to put a real challenge in front of those candidates. And I want to empower anybody that is thinking about running for office. Go after it, do it. Let your message, your vision kind of be that guide. I don't know that us setting a limit is really doing anything. I'm curious, what problem are we really solving? I hear transparency, but then we have the reports, and mine was as transparent as you can get. I actually would carry my 460 with me when I was campaigning, because there was a lot of claims that, again, as I stated earlier, that I was backed by developers, that I had all this and that. And so I carried my 460 with me to show people where my money actually was coming from. So I feel like it's a really good thing on our part to be able to show where that money is. I actually did have individuals that donated to the Max for me, not because they wanted anything from me, but because they truly believed in me and my leadership. And so I think that I feel like we have so many important issues that we are working on here collectively and very united, that it's troubling to see us spending time. And in my opinion, we're kind of wasting time on an issue like this. We're not solving a problem. We're creating something that we're saying exists. I don't think we've got a problem that exists. I think that if you report everything, everything is there. And I disagree. I think campaigns cost more than $20,000. And I think that, I think that we don't want to limit people. We want the best, and we want to be able to do everything we can to encourage people. And I worry that if you're not able to fund your own campaign, or maybe there's limits that we could put on for, if we're going to limit donations, contributions, maybe we should look at contributions that you like, okay, well then, hey, if you can only get $1,000 from outside individuals, you can only spend $1,000 to fund your own campaign. I don't know. I would like to make sure that we even it. I don't ever want to see a disparity that, like, well, if you have money, you can spend $100,000 on your campaign, but, oh, sorry, you can only, get $1,000 in a campaign contribution. So I'd like to, I'm not opposed entirely of this conversation, but I definitely want to make sure that we are giving a lot of thought into really leveling the playing field and not making it harder for people that don't come from money or don't have connections, that they are able to participate. And if somebody really loved their message and loved what they stood for, that we eliminate their ability to be able to raise funds. So, and like I said, go back to that FPPC. There's a lot of counties that are there. Some of them even said, we're adopting the state limits. And so not every single county that's listed there, while it looks like it's a comprehensive list and it looks like, oh, everybody has it and we're behind the ball. No, not really. A lot of them are stating much higher limits. Some of them are stating lower limits, and some of them are stating we're just going to abide by the state. So anyways, those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And Supervisor Velasquez was out, had a brief appointment, but go ahead. Do you have your thoughts?
I missed part of this great conversation. The thing about contribution limits, it's not that it's to restrict you so much. And I appreciate you pointing out something really important. You want me to take money from groups that deal with the county themselves, union groups, and I'm the same way. But there's got to be a point where it can be fair. It's hard to run a campaign. It's expensive to run a campaign. I get it. I've had to run many of them. Do I like to self-fund? No. But what I really don't like, is to meet with people about supporting my campaign. But wouldn't it be great if you were able to do this or do that? No. I want to do what's right for the community. A lot of false allegations. I walked in and heard something I keep hearing from certain people. Amazon somehow special backroom deals and somehow funnel money to me. No. Never once did I have a conversation with Amazon about money. Never received $1 from Amazon, never had a backroom conversation with Amazon. What Amazon did was go through the normal process, and that's what we want. We want that from everyone. Unfortunately, money getting into campaigns does influence, not for all of us, and I believe everything you guys have said here, but there are those that do. and we have to be careful. The scary part is, as was mentioned, our PACs. PACs are designed to try to go around the system. And what I've noticed here in our county is a lot of the voters don't respond well to PACs, which is good, which is great. They respond well to us going door to door. I love doing that. Even if you don't have a lot of money, going door to door will beat a person sending mailers all day long. I think it's important that we have limits so we do control what's happening out there. $1,000 might not seem like a lot, but it is. And you can get pretty far with a few. But when you're going against somebody that can receive $10,000, $5,000 checks, it's not going to be long before this county is experiencing campaigns that are $100,000, $200,000. And when it gets to that point, we're in trouble because there's nothing you're going to be able to do unless you made a deal with the devil, because that's just what it is. What we need to do now early is reduce those numbers, make it back to a point where we're going out and campaigning. Again, do I like to self-campaign and spend? No, I don't. But I'm not about to allow others or special interest groups to beat me by doing certain things. And I walk a ton. There's a lot of counties that have rules, Santa Cruz County, that help control these types of things. And there's some that don't want any part of it. I'd rather see our county be involved in this, control how much can go into a candidate's campaign, an initiative, a referendum, a recall, and make it fair. Just make it fair. Let's get it back down to we're a small community, neighbor to neighbor conversations, because I think if we can get there, we're going to really succeed as a community. So I'm all in favor of this. I've seen campaigns where money was hidden, and it amazes me how people do that, and they shouldn't, but they do. And we just need to get back to a point where it's fair for all of us. Those that are going to cheat are going to cheat. But eventually, we're going to catch those people too. And if we can bring down that number from $200,000 to maybe a $15,000 campaign, we're all in range. And that's where I'd like to eventually see us. So I'm fully in support of doing something about this. And the $25, I think it was $25, fully support that too. Because if you're going to give money, just show who it is. So
Chair.
Yes.
Before we continue, just really quickly, I hate to do this, but I just had to correct something that was said there from the public comments there about me receiving some large loans from a construction company. That didn't happen at all. I know that's not true. So I pulled up the 460 to figure out what on earth she was seeing. Unfortunately, she doesn't understand how to read the table correctly, because it clearly says under lender Dominic Zanger, I gave the loan to myself, and the construction company was where it lists for the occupation of the lender. It was a prior employer of mine. So I'm going to assume benefit of the doubt and think that was ignorance and not dishonesty, but all the same, it was completely false.
Thank you. Yeah, not surprising. So just a real clarification on the pros and cons, just a few things, because I like I said earlier, I think there are good arguments. I think everybody's making good points. The cons to me is that you can win an election with whether it's 3 to 4 large donations, 5 to 6, depending on how you run a campaign. And there's an argument that there will be pressure that you would be beholden to those very small number of people that have funded the campaign, as opposed to getting it more spread out, supporters, grassroots in your district, maybe, somebody that has a little bit of money is like really supportive of you. $1,000, I think it's fair to say they're not buying you off. And again, I fully respect both of you. I don't think either of you have been influenced by any donations at all. I don't think you're the problem. I think this is more of a correcting historical issue, and perhaps you are the exceptions in my view. But just to address the issue about Supervisor Curl's point about concern, totally get that. I'd have the same thoughts. Just to clarify, this has been on the back burner for quite a while. I've personally did we bring it forward when you were on the board as well before? So this is the third go around. We did twice. This is basically the third try. Yeah. And if we put the future agenda item in April of 2025, and obviously I've been the chair, but we went through a lot in that period with the budget and things like that. So it was kind of on the back burner. And then Francisco, I think we talked at some point like, hey, the election's coming. If we're going to do it, we're going to have to get this going now in order to do that. So it wasn't at all targeted at the timing of the election. It was, like I said, we put the future agenda item in April of 2025, 14 months before the primary. And then the problem really is historical. I do believe that those with the much larger campaign coffers, where you get that injection of 3, 4, 5 of these $6,000 campaign donations, have had an inherent advantage. The anonymity, I think, definitely. I don't even know what the argument is for this $99 nonsense. I honestly have always been very confused over why we have a rule in place that allows anonymity. And it not only, there's this false notion that it encourages grassroots support and all that nonsense. If you support somebody, put your name behind them. That's the whole point of campaign finance. Why pick a number? And the 25, if Francisco wants to address it, I preferred 0. So I think there was actually a reason logistically behind the $25 amount. And I sure, go ahead. And when you get a chance, I just have a few points. But I'm not crazy about anonymity at all, but I think the $25 amount would, for the large part, would address the issue that I'm concerned about, which is you're basically, to me, encouraging people to potentially cheat with the $99 thing. You could collect, and I've seen this. I've seen it where you've seen bizarre amounts of 99, like unconscionable amounts of $99 donations, and you just had to raise your eyebrows as to whether there was some coordination going on to get that large amount of $99 donations. And there's really no way of verifying it because they are anonymous, other than the elections office keeps records, but there's no way for the public to see and to and that's not the elections office's job, to do investigations over everything that comes across their desk that looks somewhat questionable. So there's no ability to really trigger suspicion over, let's just say somebody has $8,000 in $99 donations. To me, that's a big red flag. And then appreciate the reference to state disclosure rules. It's not all about, I think what Supervisor Curl mentioned, and it's a good rule that we have in place now, where if you get a certain dollar amount, you have to, conflict out. But it's not just about the generic developer with a project that might bring something forward. It's also about wealthy people who have a desire for X, Y, or Z. Maybe somebody's more in line with, just to stick with the development theme, maybe somebody's really gung-ho about this community really needs to stop being an ag community. We really want to become more like a Cupertino. I'm willing, I've got a bunch of money, I'm retired, I'm willing to just throw money at it. That's my concern. Or people that have connections to, maybe it's an indirect connection to a developer, so then you wouldn't have to necessarily have a conflict and step away. I do believe younger, less connected people just don't have the ability to go out and get those connections just inherently, to go on and compete with somebody who can do a $6,000 donations. And then, I'll just say that, if this gets approved and both you are running, I have full confidence that you'll get support. And I also will just point out the obvious, which is that if somebody's running against you, that they would also have those same limitations. So there would just be that inherent equal playing field. And then, just overall, the point is to limit the potential influence of special interests, and to limit the influence of money in politics. And really, I just think, like Supervisor Velasquez, I just encourage anybody who's running for office, I think it's in their best interest is to get out, talk to people, go door to door. It's actually it's very uplifting. To me, it was the most enjoyable part about campaigning. And it was a lot of exercise, frankly, that you kind of force yourself to do. So you're out there walking and you're talking to people, you really truly understanding the district, as opposed to just, I've got $10,000. I'm just going to send out, a few more mailers and try to win that way. So kind of the point. Is there anything further, Supervisor Curl?
So just a couple things. One, I just want to remind everybody when it comes to campaign finance, being someone that worked in elections for years and had lots of accusations of candidates brought up, the number one thing that was always brought up is how do you prove that they really self-funded? Just a topic that came up all the time with individuals. I personally don't like self-funding because I like using campaign contributions to show my supporters and to show my supporters who's supporting me and that these are the people, like Supervisor Sotelo stated, these are the people on my campaign finance statements that have supported me. Would you be interested in supporting me too? I use it almost as an endorsement, which can be beneficial, but also I've had it backfire on me. So, they'll see a name and they'll be like, well, I'm not supporting you because this person donated to your campaign. I'm like, I'm sorry. But where my question is the lobbying going I'll go to the lobby thing last. Electronic filings. Our disclosure docs, our campaign docs, is a system that's been in place for many, many, many years. But we have to always remember that do we have the ability to allow in the county clerk, recorder, registrar of voters office, access to terminals to be able to have people without access to computers, the ability to do campaign finance? Because the wording for electronic only comes up when you have people, and I'm just going to be honest, I've experienced it, people that are homeless that are running for office. And the alternative is, we always say, okay, the alternative is in those situations where you can't, we would have a paper option. Is this completely eliminating all paper options so that individuals, if they don't have, because I don't want to disenfranchise voters. We have a process for homeless individuals to vote. They have cross streets, and in our county, because we are so small, we use our mailing address, so their ballots come straight to the elections office and they can come pick them up. You can't do that in big counties. It never will work. But how do we ensure that we are not disenfranchising individuals without means or that are not electronic savvy? The other one would be on the lobbying edits. We changed the definitions. We just did this lobbying ordinance, correct? There were a lot of changes. County Council, if you could just kind of explain to me the thought process of the changes. It sounds like the definitions were the main thing, but also enforcement. And when you say enforcement, is that to ensure that we're following state code? We're not adding any enforcement agencies into our county, right? I just want to make sure I understand it properly.
Yes, Supervisor, you do understand it correctly. The one change we did make, though, is that it placed the county council's office in an enforcement role, which is not the appropriate role for the county council as far as campaign contributions and limits. We're happy to advise, and so we made sure that the enforcement scheme for both ordinances were consistent and that they were placed with the registrar of voters, and we will then advise them and assist them in the enforcement process. But we would not play any direct enforcement role.
But also the enforcement from the registrar of voters office is based on government code. We're not adding any stipulations outside, like now you have an enforcement division. Where I'm getting at is San Francisco has an enforcement division. They are a charter city and county, and they have an entire floor of people that do nothing but campaign enforcement. They pay for that. That's a cost. I'm hoping that that's not where we're going with this, that this is the regular government code enforcement. We'd refer to the DA, the FPPC, the Secretary of State, depending on which one, whatever the violation is. I just want to make sure I'm understanding that's what we're saying when we say enforcement.
Yes, and the ordinance specifically discusses the criminal penalties and enforcement, which is, of course, the sole purview of the district attorney's office. And then we have administrative penalties that can then be assessed. And that falls within the scope of the registrar of voters office. And we are not imposing or requiring any additional actions beyond what would otherwise have occurred under the lobbying ordinance. So we didn't want to impose any additional duties, responsibilities, or require any additional budget or have any additional budget implications as a result of it. What we wanted to do is make sure that if this ordinance is adopted, that the two ordinances are consistent with each other.
I appreciate that. I just wanted to clarify and make sure, because that's how I read it.
Yes.
But I'm not an attorney, and I'm sorry, there was a lot of lingo in there that I was like, I don't really know if that's right. So the only other thing is, does the Registrar of Voters have any concerns about this ordinance when it comes to enforcement and the wording changes of enforcement?
And as you come up, we got three things. So the disenfranchised question, the enforcement question, and then the $25 issue.
So when it comes to the drafting of this policy, we did do it in conjunction with County Council. So we do not have any issues the way it's been drafted. Overall, the language has been written by County Council with our assistance. For the second part, there is currently a terminals in our office where anybody can come in and fill out these forms electronically. But in addition, for anybody who's a new candidate, we also offer the service where we sit down with them and go over the entire module. This can take anywhere between 45 minutes to 2 hours, depending on the new candidate. We do have a lot of candidates that then bring in their forms and need further assistance, which kind of goes further to our next question, which was the $25. We did have a conversation. There was made a recommendation to put the threshold at $25 for the simple purpose that for anybody that's a candidate, it can take anywhere between 20 to 25 minutes to fill out for $1. Now, this does not take away the fact that they still have to account for every single dollar that they receive, but they don't have to go in the system, log in, and spend 25 to 30 minutes per every $2 or $3 that they receive, which in grassroots campaign can be significant. But once again, I just want to clarify, they do have to account for every single dollar, so that doesn't go away.
Thank you.
And I thank you, and I want to be clear that hearing the reasoning from Francisco, I supported it. In an ideal world without that issue, I think, just getting rid of the anonymity altogether, but considering the reasonability of the way he broached it, I thought it was certainly fine. Anything further, Supervisor Sotelo?
Thank you. Is there any interest in us, setting any kind of limit for self-funded? If we're talking about like leveling the playing field and making sure that nobody is, because it could just take somebody, when you talk about somebody having the influence, it just takes somebody coming in that has a ton of money, right? And we talk about, we want to make sure you don't have $100,000 to do this campaign. Well, all it's going to take are people that come in with their own money, if we don't set limits, that can use their own influence. And so I feel like if we're going to kind of level this playing field and we're talking about the future, right, that self-funded needs to be included in that. And I don't know how you monitor that, except that every single expense has to be recorded. And so if your expenses are $20,000, well, then where's the revenue to support paying those expenses? You know what I mean? So I really think that we need to be looking at not just the contributions coming in, but the potential in the future for if somebody comes in with a lot of money and can fund it, all of a sudden you're at a huge disadvantage because you cannot compete and they have no limitations to what they can spend. So I think I would like to ask the board to consider that, if that's something that makes sense or not.
Supervisor, if I may, we did account for that. And so what the code provides for is in the event that a candidate for county elective office contributes more than $1,000 of the candidate's personal funds to the candidate's own campaign, then all of their candidates running the election for that same county elective office are exempted from the campaign contribution limits. That's exactly what you're indicating. So,
okay, so I just want to make sure I understand you correctly. If you're running against somebody and they spent, but how will you know that? You won't know that until a reporting period.
Yeah, they have to report.
You know what I mean? So like at that point, you're already at a disadvantage because how often are we reporting, Francisco? Or sorry.
You have to, and while he's coming up, would you have to report once you hit that $1,000?
Oh, immediately. Like I know there's certain things you have to report within 24 hours. Yeah.
So
how would that work?
So there is multiple reporting periods depending whether or not you're in an election. If you're on an election, there's quarterly, multiple quarter reportings. However, if it's not an election and you still have an active committee, it'll be about every 6 months or so that you're reporting.
Right, but I'm talking like an active campaign. Let's take the June primary, right? That's where we're going to be coming.
So the June campaign, we just had one reporting in June. We are about to have another one in
January.
And then there's going to be another one before the end of the closing of the June election.
Right, so essentially there's one, right? So would the requirement be within 24 hours if you take $1,000
So you take it
from yourself, does that have to be reported? Because if you don't, you're at a huge disadvantage because by the time it's reported, the other person's already at a loss if you've spent more than and it's like, oh, well, sorry, I reported it. So sorry you didn't get it on time. You know, like I want to make sure that we think about all of the implications and consequences of what this potentially could be. I appreciate that language, but I think there's something with the timing of it that's not going to work very well unless there's a 24-hour notification that you have to record it within 24 hours, like some of your larger donations. I don't know.
Certainly, Supervisor, if you wish, we can certainly revise this to add that specific requirement and bring it back to the board.
Can we do it as a minor amendment? Does it meet that? Because we have timing issues, right? I mean, can we bring that back? Because it seems to me just objectively as a minor amendment, and I certainly support it.
Certainly, we can certainly just add the reporting timeline as to that specific item. And then we can still consider this the first reading and then bring that revision back for the second reading on December 16th.
So if I could make a couple comments, because I've looked into this and it's very frustrating. You're absolutely right. But the law, the way it works, I believe it's 90 days before the actual election. Anything over $1,000 has to be reported within 24 hours, whether it's personal, from somebody else, cumulative, has to be reported 24 hours.
That is correct.
That has to happen. The issue, and I didn't get the other parts here, talked about the restriction of $1,000 for an individual. Are you applying that to PACs and all these other groups? Because we did this at the city, and the issue we found was legally you couldn't restrict PACs and you couldn't restrict individuals. If you found a way that works, I'm all for it. I mean, again, I'd rather make it straight playing field here. I know some communities do public funding for campaigns to help with this issue. Not that we're going to go there, but that's something very important because it's going to pop up. And I remember we studied this in depth about this very issue because there were some PACs, groups that came up and said, you can't tell us what we can do or not do.
Well, come up to the.
So independent contributions are exempt, but controlled committees are subject to the disclosure requirements. And that's what's
And that's kind of what I'm saying, because independent's a PAC, supposedly we never had any conversation with you.
Right,
They
they're
can
not
do whatever they
controlled
want.
by the candidate.
So are you telling an individual they can't? You see what I mean? Because now you are at a massive disadvantage because PACs will always find a way to get in there. So that's a problem that we need to address because otherwise this thing makes no sense. And it's unfortunate. If there was a way to control PACs the same way, I 100% agree. But if you can't control the PACs control us.
So if they are a beneficiary of independent expenditures of more than $1,000, the provision that Greg mentioned would also apply just to the degree with the understanding that there would need to be a reporting time frame, but that same exemption where if a PAC or an independent expenditure were donated to an individual, their competitors for that same county office would also be exempt from that requirement.
Yeah, okay. Huh? It doesn't because basically the game here is PAC ABC throws in $30,000 to attack a candidate they don't like, saying they're no good for nothing, whatever it is, or the other candidate is the greatest thing since sliced bread, but we don't even know them. And there's nothing you can do about it. If they have a conversation, then they're restricted.
But if you're bringing up just that the independent action committee can do things that is correct. That's not subject to this. I'm not sure if I'm understanding.
It's not subject to it, is what I'm saying. So what the point I'm making is this is when, as an individual, I know this because I've had to deal with this directly. Again, I'd love to go against any candidate one-on-one, but I always have to go against PACs that are spending $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, and I got to do what I got to do to keep up with them. That's the problem, because if you restrict the person but not the PACs, we have a failure. And if you say, well, that person gives more than $1,000 because he's responding to that group to try to battle, all of a sudden the floodgates now open for everybody else to pour in as much money as possible, and then we've lost all control.
But it is limited to that office, and it's just so that it would be that equal opportunity where if one had over that dollar amount, the other people are then able to receive those similars. But I do see what you're saying, that is still a
The
presence.
floodgates are open with the PAC. The person has to respond in kind or do something to respond, has to put in, well, I have his 5,000, I got to respond to their 50,000. The minute they put that 5,000 in, now everybody else can come in and there's no limits on us to attack you now. You see what I mean? So we have to look at that and think about that a little more in depth.
And there are, as I believe Supervisor Sotelo mentioned, other counties and other policies that have just overall general caps on how much the individual candidates can receive, which is a different approach that could be reviewed or discussed. And I leave that to the board.
Could you have both? You could have a max and then you'd have the specifics as well?
I don't see why not. Yes.
We could certainly look at all of these and bring this back to the board.
What's the will?
I think we have to really go into this depth because, again, I've experienced the PAC money, and it's amazing how much money they can throw at you. And if you're at a massive disadvantage and you try to respond and you put it up to, again, $2,000, $3,000, you've opened the floodgates for everybody else against you to open for $5,000, $10,000. And
So is there a way, I mean, obviously we have to iron it out a lot, but is there a way to just apply these rules to PACs, or can that just not be done?
no.
Why is that?
Because it's guided at the state level. It's not guided at the local level.
It's actually federal level. It's a independent person.
So we
Freedom
can't,
of speech.
There's
Freedom of speech.
state restrictions, but yeah, there are state restrictions.
Yeah.
So are you saying if the PAC donates $1,000 and $1, that wouldn't trigger the allowance of the opposing candidate to?
I'm saying it would trigger. It
would
also.
Yeah,
but his point is, I think his point,
His point is that because it
well,
could
then
be
all the rules are just
broken,
gone.
then the rules are just gone.
So then
It's
we've
just
lost all the rules.
that it's a fairness opportunity, but he's pointing to the fact that, okay, because that can be tipped by any independent person.
I actually think that this goes back to the self-funding issue. I don't know if that's necessarily the best solution, because then, again, we're just basically saying all the rules. I think we need to find a different way to restrict it somehow, because just to say, well, if you throw in more than $1,000, well, then basically all these rules are just gone for everyone. Like that doesn't seem like a very good solution, because then it's like, why are we doing any of this if you're just going to have a provision that basically erases the rules that we have if someone breaks them? That's what it seems like. If just one person breaks the rules, okay, well then the rules no longer exist
For that race.
for that race.
So what's
But
the will of the
every
board?
race
Do we
might
want to
turn
have it
into that.
brought back with looking at an overall total cap on expenditures? What's the will?
I think you need to look at this, but again, the fairness part and
Look, there's never going to be a perfect. way
Yeah.
of
There's
doing
not a
this.
perfect-
That's the thing
there's-
that we have to keep in mind. If you're
And
going to
again,
support this, you have to understand that there are pros and cons to doing this.
again, this is something I've went through before studying this, and you have the issue, the big issue, the monster out there is the PACs. How many are going to jump in? Usually 2 or 3 would jump in at you. Then you have to have the individual be able to fight back. You got these 2 groups. How do you control them? Well, legally, you can't even control an individual. That's freedom of speech too, nor the PACs. Those 2 are pretty much exempt federally from these rules. Everything else you can control. That's the problem.
So
You
what's
can't
the
control
will?
those 2. I would just say those 2 you can't control. leave it
Well,
alone.
I'm comfortable moving forward with what we have and continuing to add and change things as we need. I'm fine doing that. I think it's better than nothing. I don't think it's perfect. I think at the very least, there's definitely parts of it that I have not seen why we wouldn't have, like the $25 rule and things like that. So if there's a will, I'm happy to move forward and then add and modify as we need. We can bring it back and continue to adjust it, because I do think that something is better than nothing at the end of the day.
I agree, but I think we really need to understand this before we get too far into this, because it is a problem.
That's not what he just said.
No, I know, I get it.
Go ahead.
So my question is, you stated that there's an urgency to this. You said that there's an urgency. What's the urgency? I'm
Well, because there's only elections every 2 years. So if we're going to do it for it to be applicable in the upcoming election, what are the timeframes?
So it is specific for this upcoming election that this is being pushed now, is
We
what
brought
you're
this forward a
saying.
couple of years ago.
we could wait for 4 elections from now. Yes, it's only every 2 years, and we proposed it this year for a reason, so that we get it going. If we don't do it now, then we're just going to have to, obviously, then it doesn't.
Because my big concern, and I agree complete with Supervisor Velasquez, is when I started my conversation and my comments was about PACs, and that what you're doing is you're tying the candidate's hand behind their back. They cannot respond to PAC mailers. And if a PAC, I'm going to say hypothetically, we're all up for reelection at the same time, hypothetically. And hypothetically, there's a PAC out there that decides to bash us. I could see it happen. We're not always liked by everybody. And they start doing mailers. And the mailers are county-wide. And we are limited on how much we can raise with a cap, and that we only get $1,000 per donation. How, as an individual candidate up for re-election, am I to respond to that without using personal funds, which if we put a cap on the personal funds, now I can't respond at all, and both hands are tied behind my back. I'm trying to see how we, as good candidates, move forward with we're talking about campaign finance. This is not easy, and it has been beat up, it's been sliced, it's been diced, and I haven't seen one of them work well. There's always a suffering
I agree,
consequence.
but I also don't think the state's rules work great either.
No, they don't. None of them work well.
Can we address, because I just want to make sure I understand this fully. If a PAC donates $1,005.
No, I don't think you're hearing where I'm going.
Yeah.
It's not sorry to interrupt, but it's not a PAC donating to you.
Not to you.
It's a PAC doing a mailer against you.
$1,005 on, well, it would be more than $1,000.
No, a PAC does a $10,000 mailer
PAC
against
mailer
you.
goes out. They have
How do
to
you respond?
disclose that they did it. That would trigger. That would not trigger the. That would
They
not.
have to donate to you.
So that wouldn't allow the opposing candidate to, and we have no way of addressing that.
Independent expenditures are exempt from this ordinance
Right, but could we
because they're
have it
not
where
attached,
if
they're not
a
controlled
PAC,
by the candidate.
let's just say a PAC theoretically puts out a $10,000 mailer posed to Supervisor Curl. We can't write in the rule then to allow the $1,000 limit to be lifted?
So you're saying if it happens to me and somebody does that, then I have to come to the board to have it lifted?
No, it would be automatic, what is the
So then
difference
what's the
between-
point of the cap? Because they're going to do it.
For the individual, you're saying,
Right,
not for everybody else.
right,
Is that what you're saying?
yeah, right.
That ensures that only somebody that has money can fight that. If you don't have
Then you would be
money,
able to
you're not going to be able to fight
$6,000.
that. So you're at a disadvantage. And I want to make sure that we represent everybody, not just people with money. So
If the rules are lifted at that point, you would revert back to the $6,000 cap, right?
Change.
I feel like we really need to vet this through. I mean, I feel like this is not ready for us to pass it. I think there's more conversations and more things for us to consider and look at. I think if we're going to do this, let's do it right. And let's not, anyways, I feel almost weird saying that because I am the one that's up for a reelection. But I'm not thinking about it just for me. I'm thinking about it for the future to kind of come. And I want to make sure that we get this right.
Is it okay? Well, is there any reason that we'd object to removing at least the anonymous rule for $99? Is there any reason? There's any PAC reason why that would not be permitted by? Okay, so that's okay.
I'm fine with the $25. I could care less.
But the issue is the single contributor max. That's the hang up, I guess, right? Is that what I'm hearing?
This is the inherent flaw in any, again, the state system to me, and that's why I started my statement. There are pros and cons to all these things, and I think we all understand that. But is what we have now with the state system, you have to ask yourself, is that better than what we're looking at? And in my opinion, I believe what we're looking at is a better system that allows for a more equitable playing field. If there isn't a solution, we can tell county council to come back all day long, but if there isn't a solution to this PAC complication, then we just have to make a decision whether we think that this is better than the state rules or not.
Myself, Claire, I said I was ready to go forward with this. I'm ready to go forward with this, understanding that there's a PAC issue that we can't even address either way. So it doesn't really make a difference if we can't address it. So it's just, like you said, is this better than what we currently have or not? And I've already said I support it.
I think, again, going back to this just because I've had to personally experience this over and over again. What we're trying to do is control how much money flows in. And I think we all agree on that part. If we can just say, okay, max is $1,000, that's great. What we can't control legally is the PAC money, which means if the PAC can do it, the individual has to be able to at least defend himself or herself to keep up with that. It doesn't mean we should open the floodgates for everybody else, but there's got to be.
So what's your suggestion?
My suggestion is you go by federal law, basically, and you leave the PACs out because you can't control them, and you leave the individual out because you can't control that legally. Be honest with you. You can't. But you stick with everything else you're talking about because it's fair, And if you feel, I would say, like 1,000 is not enough, okay, was 1,500 enough? What's that number that's fair, but not to the point where people are dropping $5,000 checks and, because that's almost like PAC money, I got to say. And you got to fight back. So if you leave the PACs, individuals, again, you can't do it federally anyways, out of this, what you have is good.
County Council?
Yes. It's important to note that the U.S. Supreme Court has ruled on the issue of independent expenditures. And you might remember some years back, that was a very significant issue. And ultimately, the Supreme Court held that the ability to make an independent expenditure cannot be limited by federal law based upon your First Amendment right to free speech. And so that was widely criticized, but nonetheless, that remains the law today. The federal government Congress did intend and did attempt to place those limits on independent expenditures, but they were ultimately unsuccessful in the litigation. So what we're trying to do here is to take the state statutory scheme and place additional limitations at the local level to the extent that the board wishes to impose those additional contribution limits as well as disclosure requirements. And so you really have two choices. You can obviously remain subject to the state contribution limits and disclosure restrictions, or now the law has changed to allow local agencies, cities and counties to make these changes and to create these additional limits should they wish not to be subject to state law. And so that's really the question that's before the board. What limits, if any, do you want? And what disclosure requirements do you want that, or do you want to simply remain subject to all of the requirements that currently are set forth in state law?
Yes.
I'm just wondering if, there's all these concerns over, okay, how much you can raise. Okay, well, what if it's self-funded? I don't know because this is the first time that I'm thinking about it, but so I don't know if it would work or not, but I'm curious does it level the playing field if we set a maximum cap? So whether it's self-funded or you raise money in donations, whatever it is, if we set a cap on what the maximum contribution you can have for the primary, general, et cetera, would that help us? And I don't know the answer to that, and just kind of throwing it out as kind of food for thought at this point. I had never thought about it prior to then seeing some of the examples today. And I don't know, does that level the playing field? Possibly, I don't know. So I don't know if that's something that you all would consider, but that might potentially help us.
And I appreciate that. I think it's good thought. It doesn't necessarily address the PAC issue, right? So,
Sorry.
we knew about the PAC issue coming into this, and I think everybody knows about it. So again, I'm going to come back to where I thought this is better than the system we had that we have in place with the state. And if the majority of the board doesn't agree with that for whatever reason, then I'm not really sure where we're going to be able to go with this.
Okay.
But what you're saying is, if a PAC is going against me and I want to self-fund, you're feeling like that's putting you at a disadvantage, basically.
Oh, it's massive. Yeah.
But you're not limiting the self-funding. Where's the limit?
Right. So
You're putting people that can't self-fund at
But
a
that doesn't limit you
disadvantage.
from being able to go out and raise money
no.
through the current ordinance. I mean, that person would still have the ability to fight, quote unquote, fight back by raising money. And,
Can you do that
Rallying
fast
support
enough?
and
It
getting-
takes months.
getting $10,000 or $15,000 donations if need be. And I'm not somebody that is natural at pandering and all that stuff, but I found a way to, raise enough money to win a couple campaigns. And if you really want to put the work in, you can do it.
Can. And I look, I love the idea of some type of restrictions, and I think we should. I'm just saying, if you leave the PAC out, because you can't control it, you leave the individual out, you can't control that either. We have something good, and then we should come to a number that's fair. If 1,000's too low, what's that number that's fair? I love the $25 thing. I really do. That's a really important part. You get to that number, and we get there. But it's tough.
So, okay. Okay, I don't really, like I said, we're just going around in circles here with this whole PAC thing. I'm just going to make a motion to adopt what we have here before us that we've been talking about. Can I do that? I don't know what it would be, resolution, or how the motion would be stated, but I'll just make a motion to move forward with what was presented.
Can I ask for clarification
yes.
on the added time frame, if it'd be part of your motion or not? And if so, what?
Just as we had it written down on the agenda.
Thank you for clarifying.
Then it would be to approve as presented.
Motion to approve as presented.
Is there a second? I'll second it. We can entertain additional motions because I do support this and I've been on the record. So we'll go through this. Roll call vote, please.
Supervisor Kosmicki,
Yes.
Supervisor Zanger,
Yes.
Supervisor Sotelo,
No.
Supervisor Curro,
No.
Supervisor Velasquez.
No.
Motion fails.
Great. So I would recommend, and we may have to bring it back, making substantial changes. Are there recommendations for what to bring back? If there aren't, I have a suggestion on perhaps how we could maybe compromise on this and try to get something done here, but I believe we would probably have to bring it back. And I'm not sure what impact that has on timing. But I would like to make a recommendation to see if we can compromise and come to an agreement on this. If we came back on the 16th, what are the implications? We'd be approving on, presumably on the meeting in January. Would that make it null and void for the primary? And if it does, then so be it. This isn't about, it's not about you two at all. So this is, to me, this is just something I would like to get done while I'm on this board. And if somebody else wants to come along and strip it away, then that's up to them. But Francisco?
So thank you. So the reporting period does begin in January. I will have to, we were just talking about consulting and going back to confirm that if there is some sort of change in the policy and it's within the reporting period, that there wouldn't be any issues. That it can go into effect in the middle of a reporting, essentially. That is the question we have at hand, and I'm going to have to talk to county council after this just to confirm.
Okay.
Because we don't know whether or not it's going to be permitted.
Okay.
But ultimately, like I said, that's based on government code and election, so I have to confirm with
If
them.
we increased the donation amount and took away the individual trigger mechanism, what would be a dollar amount that would be agreeable for this board? Whether it's $2,000, $2,500, I'd like to get something done that at least lowers this $6,000 that we're showing that we're acknowledging that we're not Los Angeles, we're not, a big metropolitan area where you need $100,000 to win a campaign. And to at least make an attempt to start leveling the playing field. Is there a dollar amount that we can agree to if we were to implement a higher dollar amount and eliminate the mechanism that limits the self-funding capacity of a candidate?
I really struggle with with limiting the self-funding if you're limiting the campaign contributions. But at the same time, it's like, I feel like you're hurting people both ways. So I'm really struggling with what is the right answer. I don't have an answer. I don't.
I'd be willing to throw out bringing back, I don't know. What are your thoughts? Is there somebody else who's proposed this?
Yeah, well, so then what we're talking about is what the motion I just made, except instead of 1,000, it would be like 2,500. That's what you're saying, because that's the motion. Mine didn't even have the self-funding piece in it, so it would just, because it was as it was presented, which it did have that. With the self-funding piece, was that wasn't added? That was in there, right?
Yes. Under the draft as presented, in the event that a candidate contributes more than $1,000, then the candidate running against that individual would then not be subject to the campaign contribution limits.
Okay.
Now there is a $100,000 limit $100,000 limit on self-funding overall that's within this draft as well.
Okay. Well, I'm comfortable with 2,500. Then I'll go all the way up to 2,500 if we can call it that. And I don't know if that's agreeable to any of the board members, but because I was at 1,000, so I'm trying to move up here so that we can get somewhere.
For me, 2,500 is fair. I understand these things are going up in cost. I get that. For me, it's the self-funding part of it. 2,500, I'm good. I think it's fair. Those that are running can still raise the money they need with those numbers.
So the direction would be to bring back a revised ordinance draft, adjusting the $1,000 amount to $2,500 and eliminating the
self-funding
trigger mechanism.
And to clarify, you mean the trigger for the exemption if one were to self-fund to eliminate that gap?
Yes.
Okay. And would it still apply for if an independent expenditure is made to an individual, that it eliminates the others, the restriction on the others? Because those were written in the same paragraph, and I just want that clarification.
So an independent expenditure going to a candidate would be limited to the 2,500.
An independent expenditure not subject to the policy being paid out to an individual candidate would eliminate the campaign contribution limits for the competing candidates in that specific election for that specific office.
The independent expenditure exemption would remain.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, I got to say that part's confused me too. I'm thinking PAC independent expenditure from an outside group going to the candidate. That, if it's going to the candidate, there's a restriction of the 2,500. If it's a PAC that's not working with the candidate, legally, there's nothing
There's
we
nothing you
do.
can do.
Right.
Right. If it's a controlled committee, they're subject to these requirements.
Yes,
If it's
exactly.
independent and they give above that dollar amount to an individual, that would be an exemption for that specific county office.
No. Hold on. No, there's no exemption. They're not allowed to give more than 2,500. No one's allowed to give to the candidate more than 2,500. That's it. PACs on their own, we can't tell them what to do, I guess. So that's how it works. It wouldn't like trigger to erase the rules or anything like that.
Okay.
Follow? Is there
an understanding?
Yes.
No one can give more than 2,500 to the candidate. That's it.
But can you give yourself more than 2,500?
Yes.
I disagree. I don't think that's fair. I don't think it's fair that we're not putting limits, because if truly we're about stopping outside and whatever, then if somebody can come in and spend $100,000 on their campaign, you're at a huge disadvantage. So if our whole point is leveling the playing field and transparency, et cetera, then self-funded should be limited as well.
So, understood. Is there a will to bring back an overall cap on spending
That's what I
that?
would say. Yeah, I would bring back an overall cap. That way that there can't be someone that comes in and just self-funds $500,000 or something like this.
You had 100,000, right? Is that what I heard?
Correct.
That's for self-funding.
So,
I'm talking cap on what you can spend in a campaign,
oh, okay.
right?
What you can spend or what you can receive in contributions. I want to make sure we're saying the right thing.
Sure, same. Yeah, receive is fine.
Because expenditures, let's say I had to spend $10,000 on a mailer. Can I spend $10,000? That's an expenditure. Now, the contribution is what's coming from outside. And then you have self-funding is either a loan to yourself. So we're talking about loans.
I think if we had a max cap on how much you could spend, that would address some of the self-funding issue as well.
I do not support any max cap on spending, because if you have someone that's doing mailer after mailer after mailer against you, you need to be able to respond equally. That's where I'm at.
Okay, then no cap.
I would support the
All right.
cap. I just disagree. I would
as well.
support the cap.
I'm just trying to find a resolution that we can all agree on. If there's no cap, then there's no cap. And so I would just, again, come back with the recommendation to come back with the $2,500 limit and to remove the self-funding trigger mechanism. Is there a motion?
You're saying make those tweaks to what is here.
Yes.
Yes.
We'd have to bring it back.
Yeah, I would move to bring that back.
Is there a second?
I'll second that one.
Roll call vote.
Oh, hold on, before roll call vote, can you please explain to me
Yeah.
what the motion is again? I'm not
It's to give a
following.
direction to amend the current draft ordinance to change the $1,000 individual contribution limit to $2,500, and to remove the trigger mechanism that would limit self-funding campaigns.
Remove the trigger mechanism.
I
The
think
language in the ordinance that allows unfettered.
no, I think
So basically, if somebody made a donation, if they gave 1,000, and if we changed the max contribution to 2,500, what was going to happen is if you gave $2,500 to your campaign, then it took off all the restrictions for how much you could raise. You would no longer have to limit yourself to the 1,000 or the 2,500. All of a sudden, because somebody has put in more than the max contribution, they've self-funded more, then it's kind of, it basically says, okay, well, this is null and void now. Now you can go ahead and raise however much money you want from individuals, essentially.
And-
So what they're saying is, okay, if we're going to take that out, we're going to put a max contribution on what you can raise, but you can go ahead and you can fund it however much money you want, and it doesn't trigger the other person being able to accept donations more than the max contribution limit that we're setting right now. Is that fair? Is that accurate?
Yes. So the current draft indicates that in the event a candidate contributes more than $1,000 of their own personal funds to their own campaign, then under those circumstances, the candidates running in the same seat would not be subject to the limits, the $1,000 limit. So we're going to delete that section from the ordinance, and it is going to be a strict $2,500 campaign contribution limit across the board.
But this does not apply to loans. I apologize.
Yeah.
How does this apply to loans? Because a
Yeah.
contribution is different than a loan.
Right. Now, there's another provision within the ordinance that specifically addresses personal loans to one's campaign. And under this draft, the personal loan would be limited to $100,000. Now, again, that can be modified or it can be eliminated, depending on the board's direction.
So now that we understand the motion, can we vote because it's getting late?
Is anything further?
I have several more questions, but I'm not going to belabor it because
Well, it'll come back in December then, and we can hash it out further if needed at that point. Is it roll call, please?
Supervisor Kosmicki,
Yes.
Supervisor Zanger,
Yes.
Supervisor Sotelo,
No.
Supervisor Curro,
no.
Supervisor Velasquez.
Yes.
3-2 vote, motion passes.
Okay, thank you very much. So that would take us then to the 3.5. We have 3.5, which is the CEO item, 3.6, the tiny homes, and 3.7, which is the subpoena. It is now 4:35. Do we want to continue? Are there any items that we may want to continue, or do we want to try to slam through and get these taken care of?
Mr. Chair and
Do we
members of the
anticipate a lot of dialogue on, I know, I can imagine 3.7, there will be some dialogue. Do we anticipating a lot of dialogue on? And we do have, I believe we have a time issue with 3.6, so we have to get that done. today.
3.6 should be fine because there is an action that I'm going to request to you as a board that is not stated as an action that I want to include in your approval today. The tiny homes, it should be fairly easy.
Okay.
Chair,
Yeah.
if we can just, maybe, I would suggest we start at 3.6, knock it out and go from there one by
Yes, let's do
one.
that. And if we have to continue 3.5, then we'll do that. Okay, so 3.6. We have Steve Luke.
So Steve is going to present in this item. Yes, I just want to make sure that when he finishes with his presentation, you allow me to add an additional action in your approval.
That sounds great. Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair, Board, members of the public. Steve Luke, Public Works Administrator. I'll try to speak quickly on this one. So, good news. The Tiny Homes project, which consists of 2 phases, is almost complete. We started the first phase back in 2020. Second phase started in 2024. The whole project consists of 16 tiny homes that are being built for vulnerable communities, families, individuals to have some place to move into in those type of situations. And so the 16 tiny homes are actually almost complete. And this item is basically about utility connections. And one thing that staff, myself, neglected to do when we presented this phase 2 to the board, which consists of $2.7 million, and was approved by the board in March of 2024, we've neglected to put in the approval for change orders by staff, by Public Works Administrator, by some person. And so when we're getting into the electrical connections and some things over the last couple months, we realized that that phrase was not in the original approval. So out of the $200,000, real quick, essentially 30,000 of the 200,000 actually pertains to electrical connections, safety bollards on transformers, utility boxes, and basically utility needs for the site. So we're getting really, really close. We've connected electrical. We had to do some things quicker than maybe we normally would because PG&E was on site and they said, thou shalt do these things or we will leave the site for essentially 2 months. And so we got some things done to the tune of approximately $30,000. And those are essentially the change orders that we're requesting the board to approve because staff does not have the authority to do that. So that's the $30,000. And I'm rounding, there's $170,000 that staff was hopeful would not be needed for the project. And that consists of the City of Hollister connection fees. The City of Hollister's connection fees for their impact fees for sewer was $130,000 and for water was $40,000. So, and I'm rounding, so that total was $170,000. We staff worked with the City Public Works Director and the City Manager, brought an item to the City Council on September 2nd and said, we have this tiny home project. It's for folks that are in vulnerable situations. We would like the city to partner with us, and City Council has the authority to waive those fees. We presented we requested a complete waiver of the fees. We also requested a 50% waiver of the fees. Unfortunately, the City Council voted 5-0 to not waive any fees. So that's the additional $170,000. And we had set aside the funds in sort of a building fee or a building fund that would be transferred to capital projects, but I think that's going to segue to perhaps the CAO's additional action. But currently, this item, we are simply asking for an approval by the board of those change orders. That includes $170,000, $200,000 total. And we at the RMA, we have a mechanism to do that. And I'll pause there. I can talk about HHSA unless that's what the CEO wants. Okay.
Go ahead, CEO.
Yes, so what we did, Steve was trying to use some of the general fund maintenance allocation that he has in his budget, and recognizing that the board, the county has so many issues with maintenance in different buildings owned by the county. I recommended that we use some of the discretionary funds that we have available at Behavioral Health, HSA. Actually, this grant was a submittal to the state to create this facility, and it should be coming from that particular department. We found an account along with HSA that will be able to cover those expenses for $200,000. So if you see on page number 4, at the bottom of page number 4 of the actual staff report, there's language that says that the HSA will reimburse Public Works, RMA, with the $200,000. However, there's also a comment over there that they would like us to continue pursuing the waiving of this $169,000 fees, which makes a lot of sense for me because this is not a development for someone that's going to be enriching themselves. This is a project that serves the community, and it was grant funded, and it's not only serving unincorporated areas, it's serving us, the city as well. So I would just leave that on the table for your direction to continue pursuing the waiver of fees for this particular project.
Thank you. We go public comment.
If you'd like to make a comment in chambers, please provide a speaker card. On Zoom, please press star 9 or the raised hand icon. And I have no public comment.
Bring it back to the board. Who'd like to start? No, Supervisor Sotelo is ready to go.
Sure. Thank you. Yeah, exciting. This is almost done, right? We're almost there. Obviously, I know we just need to get this done. I appreciate kind of looking and finding the money with HHSA. I am concerned, though, that the city of Hollister voted 5-0 to not support this and not to give us any type of a break. This is a project that benefits our community as a whole. This isn't just Okay, are you an unincorporated resident? Okay, well then we'll help you. This is about representing and helping everyone. And so I really, really would like to see us, I don't know why we've gotten into such contentious relationships, it seems like, but we're too small of a community for that. And we really need to work together and help each other. And so I'm supportive of moving forward. I appreciate everybody that's kind of made this possible, and HHSA being willing to kind of front this money. But I definitely would like to make sure that we go back to the city of Hollister and have more conversations and collaboration and see if there's something we can do about reducing that $170,000. So thank you.
Thank you. And before we go for Steve, what is the time frame problem that we have?
So the state of California, the HEAP project folks, they're expecting the homes to be occupied by, or available for occupancy by the end of this year. They've shown us grace because we had hoped to be actually done by August, September. And so we submitted a different calendar, said, well, a different timeline to them, and said we hope to have occupancy by the end of this year. And they said, okay, but you need to get occupied. So essentially they're working with us, but they're getting very, very anxious, I'll say, so about these homes. And knowing that we have the funding, and HHSA has been gracious and found the funding to reimburse the project, I would highly recommend we move forward. And then hopefully if the city discussion can happen over the next couple months, that would be great. But I don't recommend holding up the project for that discussion with the city.
Supervisor Zanger? Supervisor Velasquez? Supervisor Curro?
Is there anything missing in this agenda item that will stop it from going past go, like a budget adjustment?
There is nothing.
I'm sorry, I'm to the point now, I have to ask.
No, yes.
The budget adjustments in there.
So to be clear, and because we didn't have enough time to change the budget amendment, what we did, we continue with the procedure of a budget amendment, taking the funding from maintenance department. And that's what I'm asking you.
So you're going to come back with a budget adjustment to reimburse it through HHSA?
Yes, that is correct. But we want to make sure that in your approval today is subject to the reimbursement of HSA through a budget amendment coming in the future, which it will come in December.
Got it.
Correct. We're good. Thank you. Great question.
Thanks. Yeah, and I do think this is different than other situations where, for instance, a $2 billion nonprofit developers trying to build in Hollister, Eden Homes, and for giving fees for decades. This is a much different situation. And I do think it's unfortunate, because we are largely trying to serve very likely city residents. We're all in this together. The impacts, the quote unquote impacts from these residents, we are not a $2 billion nonprofit or corporation. We are the county. And I do think we do need to sit down with the city and have further discussions about how we handle these things going forward. I want to make it clear that if we do support this, that this isn't an endorsement. This is basically us acknowledging that we have like 4 weeks to have this done, or else there could be problems at the state level. And so I appreciate going out and using the HHSA money. I think that if you didn't do that, I would not be supporting this today. I would not support using general fund dollars toward this.
And I understand. And I also want to elaborate a little bit more about the long-term sustainability of a project like this. It's really going to fall into HSA to continue pursuing funding at the state level, to continue maintaining this facility. I think it's very unfair that the county is making all the efforts alone to continue having a facility like this that provides services to the entire community. And so that's what my previous comments were about. Sometimes it's better not to apply for funds because it comes with a caveat. It comes with a responsibility, a long-term responsibility that sometimes the departments are not able to comply with. And in this case, I know HSA is very proactive in securing funding, but it's not a for sure thing that they will be able to do it in the future. Just wanted to keep that in mind for future applications like this.
Supervisor Velasquez?
No, I was going to say, I agree with all your guys' comments. And I think the city in the past was burned by poor nonprofit groups, and later to find out they're worth $2 billion and salaries of $500,000 each. I think it's different here. It's government owned. Nobody's making a profit. I think there should be a conversation. And I think if that conversation is had by either the chair or somebody else to the council, I think they might see it differently, because it's a partnership of homeless and everything else that we all work together to get to. So I think we can see a different change outcome.
Anything further? Entertain a motion.
Could you include in your motion the approval of an upcoming reimbursement from HSA to RMA Public Works maintenance account?
I move to approve per staff recommendations with the amendment to be reimbursed at a future date by HHSA to the Public Works Department.
Second.
There's a second. We roll call vote, please.
Supervisor Cosmicki?
Yes.
Supervisor Zanger?
Yes.
Supervisor Sotelo?
Yes.
Supervisor Curro?
Yes.
Supervisor Velasquez?
Yes.
5-0 vote, motion passes.
Very much. That would take us to 3.7. Last item, County Council.
3.5.
Oh, sorry about that.
I think we can kick them out. I don't mind. I'm ready to suck it up.
Are we, okay, let's do 3.5. I don't think this is going to take very long. Go ahead.
Mr. Chair and members of the Board of Supervisors,
Sorry, are you leaving? We have the subpoena item on the agenda that's directly related to.
Do you want to go to that first?
Let's do the subpoena item first, please. Yep. 3.7.
3.7.
Mr. Chair, members of the Board of Supervisors, of course, you recall the circumstances which led to this item coming before you. As you know, there was a post which wasn't an implied threat, but an overt threat against the safety of our supervisors and their families, to which a criminal investigation was initiated and is pending, as well as an internal investigation that I undertook for the purpose of trying to identify these individuals for the purpose of seeking a restraining order to prevent them from making any further threats against the supervisors and their families. That is, threats of personal harm to the supervisors and their families. And so with that, I'm now bringing this forward to you. The government code permits a Board of Supervisors to issue an administrative subpoena in any matter in which they are interested. And it is under that authority that I am bringing before you a request to issue the administrative subpoena to Meta Platforms, as is indicated in the attached subpoena. Also to authorize reimbursement to the Sheriff's Departments for the cost of personal service, to authorize the County Council to take all necessary actions to effectuate and enforce the subpoena, including seeking enforcement through the Superior Court if required, and to set a special meeting on December 2nd, 2025 at 9 a.m. to hold a hearing on the matter. Under the code, the subpoena commands the individual to provide the information upon appearing before this Board of Supervisors. I do anticipate there could be a possibility where counsel for Meta Platforms may be willing to provide the information without the necessity of a personal appearance. If that is in fact the case, then it may be unnecessary for us to have the hearing on December 2nd. Nonetheless, the government code provides that in the event that Meta Platforms refuses to comply with the subpoena, then that is to be reported to the Superior Court. The Superior Court then, upon that report, then would issue an attachment which would allow the Sheriff's Department to then personally escort one of their representatives to the Board of Supervisors on December 2nd for the hearing. Hopefully that will not be necessary, but nonetheless, under federal law, all providers such as Meta Platforms are required to comply with an administrative subpoena. to provide the information. We are not required by federal law to provide notice to the individuals whose information we are seeking, although that has clearly been made public to them. And I'm sure they're aware that we are seeking their identities through the subpoena for the purpose of obtaining a future restraining order. Hopefully, this will also deter them from any future threats against the supervisors and their families. Thank you.
Thank you. We have public comment.
If you'd like to make a public comment in chambers, please provide a speaker card. On Zoom, please press star 9 or the raised hand icon. And I have no public comment.
Bring it back to the.
Oh. You didn't give me one for 3.7, but go ahead, go to the podium.
It's been a long day. I worked on this and it says, "Good morning, Board of Supervisors." So anyway, I didn't want to be here, but good grief and the absurdity of your cowardice about a cartoon. I want to address a very serious misunderstanding inside this county regarding Government Code Section 25170 and the powers of County Council. Let me be very clear for the record. California, the Government Code 25170 does not authorize administrative subpoenas. It does not authorize subpoenas of any kind. It does not allow the Board of Supervisors or County Council to compel documents to testify from private citizens, businesses, residents, critics, nonprofits, or anyone outside this building. Sending the subpoena document with a made-up case number to Meta would only embarrass San Benito County. Section 25170 simply allows the board to request internal reports from county officers. That's it. California law is very clear. Subpoena power must be expressly granted by statute. It cannot be implied. County Council has no independent subpoena authority under California law, and certainly not under 25170. Unless a department has a specific statute with explicit subpoena language, like child support services, County Council cannot issue administrative subpoenas on their behalf. If County Council is claiming subpoena authority where none exist, that is an overreach of power. It is ultra vires, and it exposes the county to legal challenge and liability. Public criticism is not a crime, satire is not a crime, and the county does not get to investigate residents or social media users just because elected officials are uncomfortable or embarrassed by satire. I urge this board to get accurate legal guidance, stay within the limits of the state of law, and stop misusing statutes that do not apply. If you do not believe me, I strongly recommend you speak to the district attorney's office. And I did speak to the district attorney this morning, and that is exactly what we both concurred, that if you do not believe me, please give him a call. Stop giving county council directions and opportunities to bill San Benito taxpayers for nonsense. You are the stewards of San Benito County residents. You have an exodus of employees. You fired employees because of budget constraints, yet you have the money to waste paying county council for that which he has no authority. So I just urge you to contact the district attorney's office and don't go out and go to Meta and embarrass us.
Thank you. Bring it back to the board. Who'd like to start?
I'll start.
I'm not embarrassed about anything. When somebody's making threats to my family, my kids, I want to know. And I don't think we should take this lightly, because there's somebody out there and we can get a restraining order. I'm all for it. I don't want to wait for the incident to happen to wake up to it and finally do something, because we might be embarrassed. I'm not embarrassed. Let's take care of this.
Thank you. Aaron?
Yeah, thank you. I am 100% in support of this, figuring out what deranged person or persons is responsible for talking about hurting our kids and us. It's tough now that we have competing legal advice from County Council and LA. I will be weighing with County Council, though, on this one. And I just think that if you don't think this is serious, given just the nature of the world we live in right now, it's bizarre that you don't take this seriously. It's actually not okay to talk about violence against elected officials and their families.
Supervisor Sotelo, do you know?
Thank you. County Council, can you comment on if this is out of our kind of, if we're not following this government Code Section 25170?
Yes, Mr. Chair, members of the Board of Supervisors. I've not spoken with the district attorney regarding this matter, although I would note that he has exclusive jurisdiction over criminal matters, and I have responsibility for civil matters. I believe that if the district attorney was at all concerned that I was in any way impairing his ability to conduct his own criminal investigation, he would have so notified me, and I have not been so notified. This is not an attempt to in any way interfere or impair the criminal investigation that may or may not be proceeding at this time. I have not spoken to the district attorney about what, if anything, he is doing in response to these threats. But nonetheless, the government code does provide this body, as well as a city council, to pursue subpoenas. This is specific to boards of supervisors. As city attorney for the city of Riverside, I used a very similar statute to issue subpoenas for matters that were of interest to the city council, and those subpoenas were upheld, and they were valid, and they did in fact provide the information necessary to the city and to the city attorney at that time based on our internal investigation. This is no different. The statute specifically is broad, and it discusses matter of interest to the county. This is clearly a matter of interest to the county. Had these individuals identified themselves, we would have immediately pursued a restraining order against them in civil court. However, these individuals have hid behind their anonymity to make these threats without any apparent consequences. It is entirely up to the board to decide whether or not they wish to proceed with a application for a restraining order if and when we're able to identify these individuals. Obviously, I cannot ensure that we will be able to obtain this information. I don't know what Meta Platforms will do. What I do know is that under federal law, they are required to respond to an administrative subpoena for information of this nature. This is a valid administrative subpoena. It remains to be seen, as I said, whether or not they will comply. If we do obtain the information, obviously I cannot ensure that the court will grant us a civil restraining order.
That's sufficient.
Thank you.
Supervisor Sotelo. Okay, Supervisor Curl.
Yeah, I'm going to go with legal counsel on this. I mean, I'm reading the code. I don't see anything that's saying, especially when it's very vague, it says any subject or matter within the jurisdiction of the board. So I do not agree with not taking action on this. I think we need to take action. Anytime elected officials or their family members are being threatened, I think we have to take it seriously. And if we don't stand together on this one, I see it as being a major challenge for future elected officials, because making a statement about this is that we cannot have threats in our community. It's only going to divide us more.
Thank you so much. And yeah, I agree, clearly threatening language in the cartoon. I think the response from the community was overwhelming, and I don't think the vast majority of our community got it wrong. It's disturbing behavior. I've resisted responding to these deranged people since this all started. There's a line of decency and there's a line of law, and they cross the line of decency many times, perhaps civil liability line as well. They've mocked officials, their race, they've mocked officials' sexual orientation, they've mocked officials' looks, their age, their illness, and even their weight. There are unwritten rules in our society that have been violated as recent as yesterday. And these are hateful, disgusting, deranged people, and they're creepy. And they're not funny, they're weird. And this isn't satire. Again, as Dave Letterman said, I know funny, that's not funny. This is not satire. I don't even actually think they're trying to be satirical. They're trying to protect themselves from what we're doing now because they crossed the line. It's not satire, it's hate speech. And now it's criminal and it's threatening. And I've resisted commenting in the past, but now I'm going to push back at these people. And I do feel threatened. My family felt threatened, and I would like to pursue finding out who they are so that we can file a restraining order so that I feel more comfort in my home that some deranged nut is not going to show up at my door at any time soon. So I would like to know who these people are. And we can't allow this sort of behavior because we have seen examples as recent as this year where this sort of threatening language leads to tragedy. I'd entertain a motion.
So moved.
So did you make the motion then? Did you move it?
Whatever it's on the.
Okay, sure, yes, second.
Move to approve as recommended. We have a first, we have a second. Roll call, please.
Supervisor Kozmicki,
Yes.
Supervisor Zanger,
Yes.
Supervisor Sotelo,
Yes.
Supervisor Curro,
Yes.
Supervisor Velasquez.
Yes.
5-0 vote, motion passes.
All right, thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. We'll see you next week.
About the last.
Oh, future agenda items. I'm so sorry.
3.5.
3.5.
There you go.
Mr. Chair, members of the Board of Supervisors, this will be a very quick item, I believe.
Sorry.
You may recall that as a result of the 90-day performance evaluation review of the CAO, I was directed to come back to you with a presentation on the difference between a county administrative officer management model and a county executive officer management model. The board did consider the difference between the two, and after careful deliberation and consideration of the presentation that I made on October 28th, 2025, the board then unanimously directed me to come back to you with a draft ordinance that was reflective of the board's discussion, as well as reflective of the county executive officer management model details as I included within my report on October 28th. This ordinance is simply a reflection of the board's direction and would effectively implement the model and would necessarily explain and implement the board's will, especially as it relates to the CEO's role, as it relates to the separately elected officials. And so I believe that is carefully outlined both in the report and the ordinance. I'm happy to answer any questions.
We have public comment.
If you'd like to make a comment in chambers, please provide a speaker card. On Zoom, please press star 9 or the raised hand icon. And I have no public comment.
Bring it back to the board. No questions, comments, motions?
I move to approve.
We have a first. Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor, roll call, please.
Supervisor Kozmicki,
Yes.
Supervisor Zanger,
Yes.
Supervisor Sotelo, Supervisor Curro,
Yes.
4-0 vote, motion passes.
Mr. Chair, do you mind if we move your future agenda item? Because I have concerns and I'd really like to have all the board here to
Sure
chat
thing.
about it.
Yeah, sure thing.
Thank you.
Respect that. We'll continue. Unless there's objections from the board, we'll continue the future agenda item to the next, the following meeting. And otherwise, we are adjourned. Thank you.
I think.